Last summer, the EuroLeague had one of the craziest transfer windows ever, with high-profile NBA players coming to EuroLeague such as Kemba Walker, Willy Hernangomez and Kendrick Nunn. Some of these signings were disasters, while others were a major success. And now this summer we have seen a record number of NBA players join EuroLeague, so let's talk about them all in this video. Starting off with the EuroLeague team with the biggest chip on their shoulder this season, and that's Olympiacos. After their third consecutive exit in the Final Four and having to watch their eternal rivals become European champions, Olympiacos are hungrier than ever to win the EuroLeague again. It's been over a decade dating back to 2013 since they last won it, and they made some massive moves this offseason to try and get better. They made the biggest signing of the summer, paying $20 million to bring EuroLeague MVP Sasha Vezenkov back to the team, who left last season to join the Sacramento Kings. But we've already talked about Vezenkov, his rookie year and crazy story in this full video right here. So let's not waste time repeating ourselves. Click the card at the top right of your screen if you want to learn more about Sasha. But bringing home Europe's best player wasn't the only major signing from the Greek Giants, because they signed NBA veteran Evan Fournier too, who returns to his home continent after 12 years and more than 700 games in the NBA. As a young prospect in the French League, Fournier won both Rookie of the Year and Most Improved Player back-to-back seasons and made a French League All-Star team. These performances got him selected in the first round of the 2012 NBA draft by the Denver Nuggets. But where Fournier really made a name for himself in the NBA was in Orlando with the Magic. There he became one of the best non-All-Stars in the NBA. He averaged 16.2 points over 7 seasons and shot 38% from three-point range. Those were definitely his peak years in the NBA, and at one point he was considered a guy on a bad team that could really help a contender, and that's why the Celtics traded for him in 2021, giving up Jeff Teague and 2 second-round picks to get him. But Fournier didn't last very long in Boston, and he was acquired by the Knicks in a sign-in trade. He made the Celtics pay for giving up on him too soon. Not only did he tie his career high with 32 points in a double overtime win against them, but he dropped another career high against the Celtics with 41 points in another close victory. Fournier had 10 threes in that game. He even surpassed the Knicks record for most three-pointers made in a season, but not too long after that his NBA career faded into obscurity. Fournier fell out of favour with head coach Tom Thibodeau and played just 88 games over the next 3 seasons with the Knicks. A lot of people, including Fournier himself, felt like he was unfairly treated and still had a lot to offer the team. He was eventually freed from his New York nightmare and sent to the Pistons at the trade deadline, but the Pistons, as a rebuilding, tanking franchise, really didn't need a veteran like Fournier. He wasn't a priority, and in 29 games he posted the worst averages of his career. The team chose to not re-sign him in the summer, and at first Fournier's plan was to stay in the NBA. At the Olympics, when asked about a potential return to Europe, he specifically said that wasn't what he had in mind. And then he suddenly had a change of heart, because he was offered a 2-year deal by the Washington Wizards but turned it down because he didn't want to take on a mentorship role for another losing team. Fournier said that playing with the national team at the Olympics reminded him how much he loves to compete, and playing for a tanking team in the NBA is not what he's about. That's why he chose to come to Olympiacos. He's found purpose as a basketball player again and has something to play for. Because at 31 years old, he's still got a lot to offer. This isn't a case of a washed up NBA player going to Europe as a last resort. Evan Fournier is familiar with the international game and has consistently been a standout player in FIBA whenever representing the national team. He has several runners-up medals with France, including 2 Olympic silvers, one of which he beat Team USA to get. Now, Fournier may not have won gold for the national team or a championship in the NBA, but he'll have a chance to win a major title in Europe. He's already got a taste of winning, as Olympiacos won the Greek Super Cup in his first game with the Reds, and he'll be hoping to do a lot more winning during his time in Greece. In order to do that though, they'll have to beat the reigning EuroLeague champions Panathinaikos, who made a statement this summer that they won't settle and are trying to get better. The Greens already had the best backcourt in EuroLeague, with superstar Kendrick Nunn and Final Four MVP Kostas Sloukas, whose insane story we talked about in this video. Jerry Grant was a hell of a backup, and then this summer they added Lorenzo Brown, the starting point guard for the Spanish national team, former G League MVP and 2-time All-EuroLeague player. Some would argue he's the best best point guard in the continent. But when the rivals made two massive statement signings bringing in Vezenkov and Fournier, Pau had to bring in some NBA guys, and they announced the massive signing of Cedi Osman, who many NBA fans will remember for his role with the Cavs during the final years of LeBron. Cedi Osman played for Anadolu Efes for 6 years before joining the NBA. He won the Turkish Cup and Turkish Super Cup in 2015 and was selected by the Minnesota Timberwolves with the first pick of the second round. He was then traded to the Cavaliers, where he became an important player. In the 2018-19 season, he averaged a career-high 13 points and 4.7 rebounds while playing 32 minutes a night. He started for 2 full seasons, played 6 years overall with the Cavs, featured mostly in a bench role from 2020 onwards. Last summer in 2023, he was traded to the San Antonio Spurs, played under the great Greg Popovich and alongside Victor Wembanyama. With the Spurs though, he played the fewest minutes since his rookie season, averaged career lows in every statistical category, and unfortunately at 28 years old, he wasn't spoiled for NBA offers. He could have signed somewhere for a vet minimum had he waited it out. The opportunity to reunite with LeBron on the Lakers was a possibility, but with more money, stability and a bigger role waiting for him overseas, he made the right decision to return to Europe. He could have signed with Real Madrid but instead chose Panathinaikos, and the opportunity to play under coach Elgin Ataman, who Giannis Antetokounmpo described as one of the best coaches in the world, is something he couldn't pass up on. Still being in the prime of his career, Cedi Osman will have the chance to not only compete for titles at one of Europe's biggest clubs, but there's no reason why he can't become one of the best players in the continent. He has the experience, he has the skill, and is in the right place to do just that. Another Turkish international who found himself in a similar situation and ended up in the same place as Osman was 7-footer Omer Yurtseven, who started his pro career in Turkey playing with Fenerbahce back in 2015 at just 17 years old. Yurtseven actually became the youngest player to ever feature in an NBA preseason game, leading Fenerbahce to a shock win over the Brooklyn Nets with 8 points and 7 rebounds. He also famously scored 91 points, outscoring the opposing team in an under-18s game in Turkey. After this, Yurtseven was labelled a prodigy and left his home country to play college basketball at NC State. As a freshman playing alongside #1 recruit Dennis Smith Jr., scouts were paying close attention to Yurtseven, but after an underwhelming year he pulled out of the draft, returned to college for a sophomore season, and as you can see his numbers improved, but it wasn't enough to get drafted. So he redshirted his junior year and transferred to Georgetown, and with the Hoyas, Yurtseven became a standout college player. He averaged career highs in every category and declared for the NBA draft, and although he went undrafted, he did sign with the Thunder's G League team, and after putting up similar numbers as he did in college, he was scouted by the Miami Heat as a potential diamond in the rough. And as we've seen them do with so many undrafted players, Yurtseven developed into a contributor for the Heat. He featured in 56 games his rookie season and even started some games, dropping 16 points and 15 boards in his first start. He also logged playing time in the 2023 NBA Finals, matching up against Nikola Jokic. Summer 2023 he signed a 1-year deal with the Jazz. That didn't work out the way he hoped and he was waived by the team. This summer, Yurtseven did have a guaranteed contract offer from the New York Knicks, but said that it was an easy decision for him to join Panathinaikos, where like Osman, he'll make more money and have a bigger role. Omer Yurtseven has made it very clear that he came to Athens to win. He wants to help them win back-to-back EuroLeague titles, and at 25 years old with a unique unicorn-like skill set, the sky's the limit to what he can accomplish. He stole the show, dropping 22 points in his debut, and there's no reason he can't become one of the best bigs in EuroLeague and potentially return to the NBA further down the line. Arguably the most famous player on this list is former lottery pick Frank Ntilikina, who went viral back in 2017 when the Knicks drafted him over Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker, which led to this iconic Stephen A. Smith rant.
I would love to see the New York Knicks get a point guard, somebody who's a threat to score the ball, who's poised, doesn't fold under pressure, can put up points from the perimeter, and has a championship pedigree. That's Fred VanVleet, not Frank Ntilikina, which is a primary reason why Phil Jackson is no longer an executive in the National Basketball Association, because that was his draft pick. And by the way, he passed up on Donovan Mitchell in order to get that dude. Don't get me started.
A lot of Knicks fans were hopeful this take would end up as bad as the infamous Porzingis one. Sadly, it didn't. Ntilikina, who was tipped to be the next big thing out of France, after winning Young Player of the Year back-to-back years, helping his team make the French League finals, he arrived in the NBA as the second youngest player, and he simply simply wasn't ready, and his time with the Knicks overall was pretty underwhelming. Over his 4 seasons, he averaged 5.5 points per game, 2.7 assists, with poor efficiency on his shooting splits. He just never had the offensive skill set to be a starting guard in today's NBA. That being said, he was able to stick around for a lot longer than people expected, because he was always a standout defender, capable of and willing to guard the opposing team's best player. This kept Ntilikina in the league for a few more years. He spent 2 seasons with the Mavericks and was briefly picked up by the Hornets last season before getting cut. But what was obvious for international fans all along was that Ntilikina was simply better suited for the FIBA game. Whenever he suited up for the French national team, he looked like a different player, and his performances for his country at major international tournaments was always something NBA teams would cling on to and hope would be able to translate to a breakout season in the NBA. Unfortunately, he was never able to piece it all together, at least offensively, and after 7 seasons and over 300 NBA games, his inevitable return to Europe finally materialized. And after playing with France at the Olympics this summer, he signed a 1-year deal with Partizan Belgrade, who are one of the most intriguing EuroLeague teams at the moment. They're a massive club with a lot of history, a crazy fan base, who are doing everything as a club to try and become a European powerhouse again. Last season they made some massive signings, bringing in Bruno Caboclo, Frank Kaminsky and PJ Dozier, all guys with NBA experience, and this season it's been more of the same. Ntilikina will play in a backcourt alongside Carlik Jones, the G League MVP who famously dropped a triple-double against Team USA for South Sudan this summer, along with other NBA signings we're going to talk about in this video. For Ntilikina though, it's unlikely he'll return to the NBA in the future, and it's hard to project what type of player he'll be in Europe right away. I'm willing to bet he's going to come in and be one of the best defensive guards in EuroLeague, and if Partizan are going to get the same player we saw for the French national team, who's won Olympic silver twice, then they're going to be a lot better this season than they were last year. Sticking with Partizan, another well-known player they brought in from the NBA was Serbian 7-footer Pokusevski, who before being labelled the NBA's next unicorn, made a name for himself in Europe at Olympiacos, becoming the youngest player in club history to ever play in EuroLeague. This feat, alongside his potential as a shooter and playmaker for his size, was enough to get him drafted in the first round by the OKC Thunder with the 17th pick. Pokusevski was the youngest player in the NBA and a long-term project for the Thunder, and he actually showed a lot of promise in his rookie season. In his first NBA start, he scored 23 points, grabbed 10 rebounds and dished out 4 assists in a win over the Grizzlies, becoming just the 3rd rookie in franchise history to ever record a double-double. He also became the youngest player in NBA history to have at least 20 points, 10 rebounds and make 5 3-pointers in a game. But unfortunately, he never built upon his rookie season. His development stagnated. He was assigned back and forth from the G League, and although he had his moments, becoming one of the youngest players to ever record a triple-double, he was never consistent enough to make that starting center position his own. It didn't help his case that the Thunder drafted Chet Holmgren in the 2022 NBA draft, who also fit the unicorn role in his own right. By 2024, the Thunder were competitive, they were the number 1 seed, and Pokusevski wasn't where he needed to be to help them win. So he was included in a multiplayer trade to the Charlotte Hornets, where he played 18 games last season. There it was more of the same, he didn't improve and he was cut by the team in the summer. And although he wanted to stay in the NBA, he didn't get the call. However, signing with Partizan and playing under the legendary Coach O might end up being the best thing that could ever happen to him. Pokusevski is still only 22 years old. He has elite potential and time to fulfill it. It's gonna take some developing, but if he can become the player the Thunder hoped he could be, now back home in Europe, he might have the opportunity to return to the NBA in the future, a much more polished and better player. And I think in the coming years he'll become a regular with the Serbian national team. Next up, we have a player who gained hype in Europe by breaking Luka Doncic's EuroLeague records, but his NBA career ended almost as quickly as it started. Usman Garuba was scouted young and made it through the ranks at Real Madrid. He was a child prodigy who was too physically dominant for the competition his age and often played years up. At just 16 years old, he became the club's youngest debutant in Spain's Liga ACB. The following season, he became a first-team regular, and at 17 years old, he surpassed Luka Doncic as the club's youngest ever starter. He quickly made a name for himself in Europe too, averaging 3.9 points and 4 rebounds per game in EuroLeague, and he won the Rising Star Award after his 24-point, 12-rebound performance against Anadolu Efes in the EuroLeague playoffs. NBA teams started to take notice, and while representing the Spanish national team at the Tokyo Olympics, Garuba was drafted with the 23rd pick by the Houston Rockets. As a rookie, Garuba played just 24 NBA games and spent most of his time in the G League. As a 6'8", undersized small big without a jumper, he was very raw and unpolished and was seen as a project player, one that the Rockets were quick to give up on after just 2 seasons, as he averaged just 3 points and 4 rebounds as a sophomore. The fact that the Rockets already had Albert Şengün and Jabari Smith Jr. made him expendable, as they already had young talent in the front court. Summer 2023 was crazy. Garuba was involved in a multi-team trade that sent him to Atlanta. The Hawks quickly shipped him off to OKC, who then cut him immediately. Then finally, as an unrestricted free agent, Garuba joined the Warriors on a 2-way contract. Unfortunately, he couldn't break into the rotation, played just 6 games in Golden State, his contract wasn't extended, and at 22 years old, his NBA future was looking bleak. The 2024 Olympics were an opportunity for Garuba to showcase his abilities with the Spanish national team, and as one of the few NBA players on the roster, he was expected to have a big role. But the European champs crashed out in the group stages, and that opportunity was a missed one. And with no NBA offers on the table, the obvious next step for Garuba was to return to Europe. In an article with EuroHoops, he spoke about the dark side of the NBA, and how hard it is to make a name for yourself with such little playing time and bouncing from team to team. This summer, Garuba re-signed with Real Madrid, his hometown team where it all began. He returns older, more experienced, and will have a bigger role now than he did before the NBA. He admitted that he feels more valued in Europe than he did in the States, and that returning to the NBA really isn't a priority for him. Usman Garuba knows that the NBA isn't the end-all be-all, and now he has the opportunity to create a career for himself in Europe, competing for titles for the biggest club in the continent. Another French guard that was once destined for big things that ended up being on this list despite still being young is Theo Maledon. Back in 2019, there was a massive debate coming out of France about who the best young guard in the country was. Some people said Theo Maledon, others said Killian Hayes. The narrative changed on a year-by-year basis, and although Hayes was a lottery pick in the 2020 NBA draft, the year before that, Theo Maledon was considered the #1 guard prospect in the draft class, ahead of guys like LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton and Cole Anthony. Maledon made a name for himself with French club Asvel. He made the All-Star team as a teenager, as well as many other titles, such as the French League Championship, and even the French Cup, where he was finals MVP after scoring a game-high 13 points in the final. Maledon was considered the best young French guard since Tony Parker. Had he been drafted in 2019, he'd have been a lottery pick. But despite playing 20 minutes a night in EuroLeague, Maledon's draft stock tanked, and he fell into the second round, where he was drafted by the 76ers and then traded to the Thunder, where he started his NBA career. For a second round pick, Maledon actually impressed his rookie season. He averaged 10.1 points and 3.5 assists starting in 49 of 65 games. However, as the Thunder improved and drafted better players, he saw less of a role in year 2, and at the end of the season he was traded to Houston, got cut by them, and then signed with the Charlotte Hornets on a 2-way deal. With LaMelo Ball's injury, Charlotte was a great opportunity for Maledon to make his mark and establish himself as a legit NBA point guard. Though he never made the most of this opportunity, he posted the worst numbers of his NBA career for the tanking Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets cut him. He was then picked up by Phoenix on a 2-way contract, but yet again wasn't able to maintain a roster spot. And after 4 NBA seasons with 3 different teams, Maledon's NBA career was over after averaging 7.8 points, 2.8 rebounds and 2.9 assists. Once upon a time, that would be good enough to be in the league as a backup point guard, but not in 2024 when the league is more talented than ever. Young players get less playing time than ever before, and if early in your career you're jumping from team to team, it's not going to be very long till you're out of the league. Theo Maledon, with no NBA offers, returned to where it all began in France. Rejoining Asvel, he'll get to play alongside the legendary Nando De Colo, and considering how good he was as a teenager, we can expect him to be even better now that he's older and more experienced. Next up on the list, we have one of the most known former NBA players on this list who played almost 450 NBA games. That's Stanley Johnson, a standout college player at Arizona who won Pac-12 Freshman of the Year as well as the Julius Erving Award, and he was drafted with the 8th pick in 2015 by the Detroit Pistons. Johnson was considered the best wing prospect in the 2015 draft class. He was described as a generational athlete that was even compared to Kawhi Leonard. Unfortunately though, he's remembered in the Motor City as one of Detroit's major draft busts, and it hurts even more for Pistons fans considering they picked him ahead of Devin Booker. Johnson just wasn't the same player at the NBA level as he was in college, and as you can see by the stats, he didn't improve despite receiving more playing time as he got older. Eventually the Pistons gave up on him, he was sent to New Orleans in a multi-team trade, played just 18 games with the Pelicans, but at this point Johnson was still young enough, and the Raptors, as one of the best development teams in the NBA, took a chance on him, hoping to help him fulfill his full potential. Stanley got off to a dream start in Toronto, hitting this game winner against the 76ers.
They double team Johnson. Great handle to get out of it, inside, blocked. Johnson with a putback for the lead.
But not even the Raptors could get the best out of Stanley, and from then onwards it was a downward spiral. He was in and out of the NBA, briefly joined the Lakers, then Spurs. From 2022 onwards he spent most of his time in the G League, and after a long season with the Stockton Kings hoping to get a call-up, the call never came from Sacramento, and at 28 years old there wasn't a future in the NBA for Stanley Johnson, and that's why he signed with Anadolu Efes this summer. Life has been crazy for him in Istanbul so far. His house was targeted and shot at not too long after his arrival, but from a basketball standpoint, he's joining a big club who've had a lot of success in recent years. Efes are going through a bit of a rebuild after winning 2 EuroLeague championships in the early 2020s, and while coach Ataman and Vasily Micic are no longer there, he'll still get to play alongside superstar Shane Larkin while in Turkey, and Efes will be hoping to re-establish themselves as the best team in the country. But this is a new opportunity for Stanley Johnson, a fresh start that he really needed, and while he won't fulfill his insane potential in the NBA, he has all the chance to do so in the world's second best basketball league. Turkish hoops fans are gonna love this video because Furkhan Korkmaz is the third Turkish player on this list. He started out alongside Osman at Anadolu Efes, and after winning the Turkish Cup in 2015 he was selected by the Trust the Process Sixers with the 26th pick in 2016. He played another 2 years in Turkey, winning another 2 domestic cups before being bought out by the 76ers for €2 million. Korkmaz had to wait a long time for his NBA opportunity, and he famously went off for 40 points in Summer League but still didn't play his first game until 2018. He was unhappy with his situation, often sent back and forth from the G League, but by year 3 he was finally getting playing time, and established himself as a key bench player in Philly. His best season came in the 2019-20 season. Korkmaz averaged 21 minutes a night, scored 9.8 points per game and shot a career best 40% from 3-point range. That season he had many moments. He went off for 31 points against Chicago, dropped a career high 34 against the Grizzlies, and even hit the game winner against the Blazers.
Horford will screen, he'll pop, ball comes in the corner, Korkmaz hits! With 0.4 of a second remaining.
Despite playing 7 seasons and over 300 games with the 76ers, and even starting in the 2021 Eastern Conference Finals, Korkmaz was often unhappy. He requested a trade away from the team twice, but learned the hard way that the grass isn't always greener elsewhere. After winning the G League championship in Delaware, he eventually got his wish and was traded to the Pacers last summer. But after just 1 day in Indiana, he was cut from the team. And despite feeling like he had more to offer than he ever got the chance to in Philly, he quickly realized there wasn't much interest in his services, and he remained a free agent for many months before eventually packing his bags and returning to Europe this summer. In August, he signed a 1-year deal with AS Monaco, where he'll play alongside the EuroLeague MVP Mike James, whose incredible story we talked about in this video right here. At Monaco, Korkmaz is a part of a massive project. The French club are desperate to win the EuroLeague for the first time in history, and Korkmaz will be hoping to help them accomplish that, as well as maintaining the club's recent domestic dominance in the French league. And although he probably wishes he was still in the NBA, the chance to win titles and compete in Europe while living in one of the world's best cities is a lifestyle many hoopers around the world would be more than happy to settle for. Next up on the list, we have a standout player from the famous South Sudan team who were robbed of a historic victory versus Team USA in London. That player is Wenyen Gabriel, who went undrafted out of Kentucky in 2018 and earned a roster spot the hard midway at NBA Summer League for the Sacramento Kings. Gabriel had to go down to the G League, where after a 37-point and 11-rebound effort against Iowa, he got himself a move to the Blazers. And this was one of many short pit stops. Gabriel played in Sacramento, Portland, Brooklyn, New Orleans, until he finally found a home in LA with the Lakers, only after he played 6 games with the Clippers. But with the Lakers, Gabriel had his best stint in the NBA. He impressed towards the end of the 2021-22 season and featured regularly the following year, appearing in 68 games. He averaged 5.5 points, 4.2 rebounds and around 60 minutes a game, and even saw some playing time in the postseason when the Lakers made the conference finals. Gabriel had carved out a nice role in LA, and fans were disappointed to see him walk at the end of the season. That summer, he suited up for the national team at the 2023 World Cup, and after being the tournament's Cinderella story, helping South Sudan qualify for the Olympics for the first time in their history, Wenyen Gabriel still didn't have a guaranteed offer. He returned to the G League to try and make a team, did eventually earn a 10-day contract with the Grizzlies, but nothing came of that either. Playing with South Sudan at this year's Olympics, Wenyen Gabriel impressed in Paris, but not enough to catch the attention of an NBA team. So instead of hanging around waiting for another opportunity, Gabriel capitalized on his performances at the Olympics and signed with Israeli giants Maccabi Tel Aviv, who just missed out on last season's Final Four in devastating fashion to the eventual champs last season. Wenyen Gabriel is a nice player. He's long, athletic, versatile, can hit from the perimeter. He's the profile of player NBA teams are always looking for, so a return in the future is not to be ruled out, but at 27 years old, Gabriel just wants to play and compete. He's in the prime of his career, and he'll have the opportunity to make a name for himself in EuroLeague, as Maccabi's title defense won't be easy if Patrick Beverley's really as good as he says he is. Speaking of NBA veterans who played many years and are now heading overseas, Shaquille Harrison is another one ready to enter a new chapter. After going undrafted in 2016, Harrison had to grind his way to the pros. He started off with the Northern Arizona Suns in the G League, where he made a name for himself as a defensive specialist. In the middle of the 2018 season, he was given a 10-day contract with the Suns, and he did not look back, dropping 14 points in his first start against the Hornets, and then signing a multi-year deal just weeks later. In the 2018 offseason, when the Suns traded Brandon Knight, there was an opportunity for Harrison to have a bigger role, and the GM even said that he could be the starting point guard. It only goes to show how quickly things can change in the NBA. He was cut by the team. Harrison then joined the Chicago Bulls, where he played 2 seasons. This was the most he played in the NBA. Over his 2 seasons in Chicago, he played 116 games and averaged career bests all across the board. After he left the team in 2020, things went downhill. Over the next 4 years, Harrison would play for 6 NBA teams: the Jazz, Nuggets, Blazers, Nets, Lakers, Grizzlies, but despite wearing 6 different jerseys, he played just 44 games since 2020. He was constantly sent back and forth from the G League, where despite winning Defensive Player of the Year twice and leading the G League in steals, he could never find a home in the NBA. He was always signing short-term deals. There was no stability whatsoever, and at 31 years old, he learned that the NBA isn't very kind to journeymen, and instead of waiting around for his next pit stop, Harrison finally decided to go overseas. He had a good run at the NBA, even got to play in 2 playoff series with the Nuggets and Lakers, but at this point of his career and life, he wants to play, he wants stability, and he'll have the opportunity to do so after signing with Asvel in the French League. Being a defensive specialist, Harrison will get a lot of playing time in Europe. In EuroLeague, he'll be tasked with guarding the opposing team's best players, and although he's not going to be playing for one of the contending teams, I expect Harrison to make an all EuroLeague defensive team and possibly get a move to a bigger club further down the line. And lastly, we have a fan favourite that NBA fans will be disappointed to find out has left the NBA to return overseas, and that's 7'4" Boban Marjanovic, who somehow ended up being a giant despite his father being just 5'9". Boban started his pro career in 2006, and after making a name for himself in the Serbian basketball scene, got his big move to Russian giant CSKA Moscow. He went undrafted in 2010 and really wasn't considered an NBA prospect. He then briefly played with Lithuanian club Žalgiris, where he won the LKL championship. This earned him a move to Cervena Zvezda, one of the biggest clubs in Serbia, and it was here that Boban made a name for himself and became one of the best players in Europe. During his time with the Belgrade Giants, he won 3 Serbian League MVPs, the Serbian League title, and in the ABA League featuring all Yugoslavian nations, Boban won the title there too and was MVP of the playoffs. That same season in 2015, he led the competition in rebounding and made the All-EuroLeague first team. These performances caught the attention of Greg Popovich, a coach who always looked for hidden gems in Europe, and Boban signed a 1-year deal with the Spurs in 2015. He was a part of the San Antonio team that won 27 games in a row at home, and after 54 games with the Spurs, at the end of the season he became an unrestricted free agent, and Boban signed with the Pistons. Marjanovic spent 2 years in Detroit in a similar kind of role before being traded to the Clippers. Over the next few years, Boban briefly played with them and the Sixers before finding an NBA home and sustainable role in Dallas. Playing alongside Luka Doncic, Jalen Brunson and others, Boban was able to make an impact for the Mavericks. He was a big body, an efficient scorer who would come in, rebound and get some easy points on the board. He played 100 games in 3 seasons with the Mavericks, averaged 5.4 points, 3.6 rebounds and shot 56% from the field. In summer 2022, Boban joined the Rockets and played out his final 2 NBA seasons in Houston. But this summer, at 36 years old, after 9 years and 331 NBA games, Boban returned to Europe, signing with Turkish powerhouse Fenerbahce. And at this point in his life, Boban is just happy to still play basketball and be able to compete at a high level. Because of his age, it's unclear what kind of role he will have in Turkey, but with his size, experience and familiarity with the European game, I have no doubt that Boban will be able to have an impact and be an effective contributor regardless of whatever role they have in store for him in Turkey. And while you look at Boban's NBA numbers, averaging 5.5 points and 3.6 rebounds for his career, he wasn't the most spectacular or dominant player by any means, but he's definitely somebody who had an impact, who NBA fans will cherish and won't forget about for a long time. But let me know down below in the comments what you think of these NBA players who came to EuroLeague. Let me know down below in the comments which players you think will be successful and who do you think will fail. If you've enjoyed this video, I bet you'll enjoy this video on the middle of your screen where we talk about Kostas Sloukas, who's considered the biggest traitor in EuroLeague history and how he had the ultimate redemption story and what I think is one of the craziest basketball stories ever. Click the middle of your screen to watch that video, and on that note, it's DKM signing out until next time, and peace.